LinkedIn, and we're live, man. Happy
Woo!
Monday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build Your Strategy into HubSpot with Tony Dowling. How you doing, man?
I'm very well. Good morning, good afternoon if you're in my part of the world. Good evening, maybe if you're somewhere else. Bore da if you want it in Welsh. Pnawn da, nos da. What else can we do? Welcome, Croeso. Welcome, everybody. Great to be here again, Chris. Looking forward to today's chat. Forget my words.
Yes, I am as well. And the HubSpot adoption gap. It's like how many different ways, how many different words can we use to describe these problems that we're experiencing every day? And I can tell you, since we're okay at the marketing stuff, we're gonna find as many words as we can to figure out which one is going to actually work towards solving, these problems that we keep running into. And but since we have a tendency to kind of experiment with what works, let's take a minute to define what we even mean when we say HubSpot adoption
Yeah,
gap.
yeah. So as a really good point, and I'm a big believer in the category pirates writing. I don't know if you've come across those guys, but the idea of category design, especially, and we're finding ourselves falling more and more into this space, pun intended, I guess. But it's led us to very carefully consider what this adoption gap is, what we mean by adoption gap, and for me, it's the space between, or the distance between, the gap that you create when you buy HubSpot and probably pay for that initial onboarding. Pretty much everybody does that now. I think there's a bit of training in there. Maybe you do it with HubSpot, the so-called hands-off onboarding, or maybe you do a bit of HubSpot Academy. The space between that point and when HubSpot becomes a fully functioning, let's use your words, Chris, a fully functioning customer platform or data platform in your business, something that you build your business on. I like to think of it as a table where everything is placed on the table, right? As everything is placed on the platform. So when I talk about the HubSpot adoption gap, I talk about that. This is the space between getting it in, getting it working, getting it implemented, maybe getting it built. And then that time you find yourself in 6 months down the road, when your data is a mess, your processes are overcomplicated, causing friction, and people aren't using HubSpot. And you think to yourself, this HubSpot is rubbish. Or maybe you think those partners that onboarded us, that was terrible. Or maybe you think that HubSpot onboarding was a waste of time. I need to try and do it again. So we find that gap. Now, why it's interesting to me is that there are lots and lots of people who can onboard you successfully. The onboarding will be successful in so much that the onboarding is listening to your processes, pulling maybe your user stories together, creating systems and processes within HubSpot, integrating other systems into HubSpot to create the customer platform. All that work can be done extremely successfully, and you'll still find that nobody uses the thing. And that's the cruel piece. That's the irony. So I'm particularly interested in this from a smaller business perspective, actually, because HubSpot has a transformational potential with smaller businesses to take them off email and spreadsheets and to actually bring them into the cloud, bring them into a CRM. But I've seen it apply equally to enterprise businesses as well. So we've got a fabulous, all singing, all dancing HubSpot system. We spent a fortune on the software, a fortune on setting it up. 6 months later, we have what we like to call HubSpot decay. People aren't using it. They're not logging into it. The reports aren't up to date. The data isn't reliable, and so on and so on. So it's that very specific thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, and if I could just provide a visual here, because it's so easy, and we know that most of the ecosystem, they're having trouble with this right now. And again, we talked at length about the difference between customer platform and point solutions, and there's a couple of levels of adoption here, and I'm going to share my screen to just kind of talk about what I mean by that. And me and Willem, we get together every Thursday and we talk about onboarding. And this space here is one. It's easy to just skip it altogether, right? And the reason that we separate onboarding from adoption is this value realization
Yeah.
piece, which now has. And so with point solutions, you could argue there's only one level, and that's where the team is using it. Whoever wanted the point solution to do something is using it, and it's doing that thing that they were sold. It's doing that. It's solved for that one point in the journey, literally point solution. That's what we mean, right? As we take it to the level of customer platform, right? And its strategic implementation into the way that people are doing business, right? The whole platform, a bunch of teams in there, and leadership, right? Leadership understanding. Like leadership, we need them to say this about
Yes.
HubSpot. I realize the value of HubSpot. And until we get there, it is always they find ways to put challenges. And to their credit, like until they get to this point, why are they spending time looking at dashboard? Why should they go into this new tool that they've never been in before,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's the second level of adoption that we've got to find ways to get to, or else we're playing a losing battle like from the get-go.
That's brilliantly explained, Chris. I think that's exactly. I love this. I realize your value. So now we've got, and they're on the road to advocacy as well, as you can see from your diagram. That's terrific. And shortly after that, they start saying to people, "This is great. I'm so glad
Yes.
we spent this money." But without that adoption piece, now this is what we, as in Real Inbound, what I'm spending a lot of time on at the minute, the solve for that step. And I think I've got a relatively unusual background for a HubSpot partner in that the majority of my background was actually leadership positions in the media, rather than technical or marketing positions. I find myself as a HubSpot amateur, enthusiast, hobbyist, if you like, graduating into running my own HubSpot partnership, right? So I've used HubSpot for years, since 2012 probably, as a CRM event. When that came along, so I built up this. I was an advocate for it before I was a partner of it. But my real job, if you like, my day to day was senior leadership. That's what I did. And I think that's the lens that's allowed me to see this problem slightly differently. We can't. There's a saying in it: so you can't outrun a bad diet. You can't. You'll get to a point where this stuff fails, and no matter what your partner or even HubSpot themselves, or although I think we recognise HubSpot don't do a fantastic job on even onboarding, much less adoption. You're far better off with a partner there. But no matter how good a job the partner makes of the onboarding piece, adoption is something that's held within the organization. And I would go so far as to say it cannot be influenced by the HubSpot partner, by whoever is helping you with the training and the onboarding. And that's why we've come up with this idea of utilizing what we call in business, you'll have maybe have heard the term, I'm sure you'll have heard the term, a management control system in order to ensure the effectiveness of the adoption. Okay, now I'll speak to that in a little bit more detail, but broadly what we're talking about doing is engaging leadership in the process of their teams accepting HubSpot. So the typical scenario, perhaps the easiest way to illustrate it, the typical scenario is a senior leader will sign off on HubSpot, a sales director, a marketing director, maybe a customer service person will say, we really need HubSpot. They'll look at the use case, the business case rather, they'll do the sums and they'll, yeah, that's fine, away you go. Now, if that senior person has very little interest in doing that work, doing that, it's transformation after all, they'll delegate it. In all good, for all the right reasons. They'll say, yeah, you look after that. But the issue is, if leadership don't get behind these projects, the people in the business won't get behind these projects. It's as simple as that. So right from the start, the person who's sponsoring the project is up against it. And it's the worst thing in the world. And God, how many times we've seen it time and time again. A sales director who doesn't log into HubSpot. What chance have you got of salespeople using HubSpot? Slim to none, right? So
Yeah.
the point of the management control system is it gives leadership a framework with which to approach the adoption as their own project, as actually part of running the business, as much as anything, as part of business as usual. Okay, so we stitch, if you like, the adoption process into the everyday running of the business. Because without that aspect, leadership aren't interested. They've delegated. Maybe it's not fair to say they're not interested, right? They've delegated it out, or they don't really know what's going on.
Right.
Then the adoption piece is going to fail. So you'll be onboarded, tick. Your software will be installed, tick. You'll be paying your money. Don't have to worry about that. HubSpot will have the money off you. But will it actually get into the business? Will it become your customer platform? Will it become the strategic basis of what you do? No, not unless that leadership grasps what needs to be done. And I say that's where I think we are different now, in that we can do the onboarding, we can do the building, we can do the implementation, we can do the integration, we can do the data migration. But we put this thought into this adoption piece, the adoption gap, as you called it. And our approach to a management control system is what makes the difference between us having to be pushing the water uphill, as HubSpot partners always do, to the business themselves accepting it's their responsibility and stitching it into the fabric of the business.
Yeah, and this definitely comes from a place of experience as well for me, as I was brought into organizations, as a leader of marketing, a leader of customer experience, getting the buy-in for the overall strategy, not hard. At least for me, it wasn't. And that's where, even if the leader is bought into that, right? In so many spaces, even the cost of HubSpot as a customer platform is nothing, right? Compared to other things that are happening in the business. So, in so many ways, it's like, yeah, Chris, go do your thing. Like,
Yeah,
good, HubSpot, great. But then it starts to fall apart when I'm like, okay, all these other teams that they need to change, right? I cannot I cannot move them to change. Like, as a leader in this other department, often a new department, a new initiative is happening. And as I've experienced that from the outside now, I'm usually waiting for this point where we're moving through a roadmap process and we get to, like, okay, this deliverable that we said we were going to do, we cannot do it until you get your leader saying the right things, like doing the right things to get the rest of the business in line with what needs to happen
yep,
in order to get that deliverable done
yep.
right. So then it's a coaching effort. And I think this is where it's the strategic application of HubSpot, whether you're using HubSpot onboarding or partners, it can be a very different experience for you as a HubSpot customer if this part's not being addressed. Because I'll just stop in my tracks and say, like, because and I challenged this when I was on the inside too. Like, if you're bought in and I'm having trouble getting you as a leader to log in to look at a dashboard that will make everything very easy for you, and you're still asking for slides or for a spreadsheet version, like, I'm like, what clearly we don't respect or value HubSpot at that point if I
Yep.
can't add this login. So why, right? What can I do to help you understand, like, and start that part of the conversation? Because if we can't get that part done, I mean, we have no chance at the other stuff, right?
That's the magic word. What you said, change, is the short little word, right? This is at the heart of all of these issues, and however we address it. So There's a principle at play, particularly if you're restructuring businesses or turning businesses around, right? We don't want people to work harder. We want people to work different, right? And the customer platform encourages you to work different. It encourages you to run things differently in your business. The way you look at your data, the way you measure what you're doing, the way you deliver your services, the way you attract your customers, everything is not meant to be harder. And this is the other thing I see in HubSpot a lot, additional processes, things on top of the way people are working, things as well as the way you're working. So go into the CRM in addition to updating your bloody spreadsheet is the one that you're right. The whole piece here is about change, and that change actually applies to the management team more than it does even the people within the organization itself. And if they don't change, then the people in the organization are going to change. They're not going to adopt HubSpot. And this is why the management control system is so important, because if you do it properly, it addresses the strategic direction of the organization. And this is the important bit. Underline this bit, right? Highlight it in the recording. HubSpot becomes a tool. HubSpot becomes the tool that they use to do the things that you've high level agreed that you need to do, right? So you don't do HubSpot. You don't get up in the morning and go, right, let's do HubSpot today. Woo! You use HubSpot. It's just another tool. Like, we talk about this a lot in the ecosystem. Just because somebody's giving you a hammer doesn't mean you can build a house, right? Just because somebody gives you a set of golf clubs doesn't mean you can break 80 or whatever the analogy is going to be. Same with HubSpot.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. No, not ever. Maybe 100 if I'm on a good day. Yeah. The tools, and the other thing, of course, when the only tool you have is a hammer, then all the problems look like nails. So, if you're using HubSpot as point solutions, you don't see the opportunity for this biggest business transformation. So you have to be talking at that point, that level, I think, with leadership. What are we trying to do here, guys? Right. Well, we want to sell more stuff. Okay. How do we sell more stuff? How do we increase? Let's give that a proper title, right? How do we increase our monthly revenue, or even our MRR, our monthly recurring revenue? Right. Okay. So there's a number of different ways we could do that, right? Let's look at the sales team first of all. We can increase our average order value. Okay. We can increase our activity levels. Okay, we could do that. Yeah, we could freshen our pricing structure, so we can try to leverage more out of our historic clients and so on. Okay, great. So we've got 3 or 4 different strategies there. What can we do from a marketing perspective? Well, if sales had more leads, they'd be more choosy, they'd qualify better, and perhaps we'd improve sales velocity. That would have an impact on our money. Great. Okay, so how are we good? Right. So gradually you build up these series of strategic objectives for the organization, and the management team, through the management control system, get measured on those objectives. The way we deliver those objectives is through the use of HubSpot. Right, so HubSpot is actually down at the bottom. The management control system and the objectives are at the top. This is the strategic imperative. The strategic imperative is to grow monthly revenue, to reduce customer acquisition cost, to improve our sales velocity, to declutter our processes, or improve our NPS scores, or whatever it's going to be. Grow EBITDA, blah blah. Any of these properly strategic objectives that need to filter down into HubSpot. We don't come along to the business and slap HubSpot on the business as a plaster and say, there you go, now it's set up. Now you're onboarded, everybody's trained, away you go. That's the piece. This is where I'm fascinated by. I think that's the bit where it fails, when the management, as we've been saying, they don't buy in, they abdicate responsibility or delegate the authority, because of course you can delegate authority, but you still can't delegate responsibility. This is what they do. It's not my problem now. This is Chris's problem. Chris is going to sort this for me.
Yeah.
That's a death knell for the platform. You may as well not buy it if you're going to do that. So you have to view it at that highest level of strategic direction first, and build your management control system, whether that's going to be balanced scorecard, whether it's going to be benchmarking, whether it's going to be financial reporting, whatever management control system you're going to utilize, build that around the strategic objectives and deliver against them via HubSpot. And then now, as a manager, as a leader, I'm coming into work and I'm going, okay, what are we doing against our strategy? We're talking sales team, we're talking about increasing our monthly revenues. We've got 3 initiatives on the table. improve our average order value, increase our activity level, and maybe improve our close ratio as well, right? What are we doing in order to achieve those things? And it breaks down and it breaks down and it breaks down, and all I'm doing is using HubSpot to deliver that stuff. I'm using
Yep.
better sales collateral, which I use HubSpot for. I'm tracking metrics more effectively, which I'm using HubSpot for. I've got a pipeline set up properly that's had its methodologies removed and just focuses on processes. Because I know what I need to do in order to do these big things, and I can deliver it through HubSpot. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Do you know when Dan's coming over?
And I think like that's this layer of adoption of, okay, maybe we're using HubSpot to execute on the strategy now, but like so much time gets spent in trying to translate that to the rest of the business, the rest of the stakeholders, which that time should literally be zero, right? If the dashboard is telling the right story. So that's like the first part of that is building the dashboard based on what the rest of the business leaders are telling you the objectives are and what they care about,
You
activities,
might even call
results,
that
right?
the management control system. That's
Right.
100%. It could just be a dashboard. It could be a balanced scorecard. It could be anything. But start with, this is the place where we're going to measure our effectiveness.
Yes. And then making sure that the management team, leadership team understand that story to the point where they don't ask questions. And this is where it's very challenging as a HubSpot champion. I've experienced it so many times because it's new. Like you have to come at this like you're the underdog, right? You've got to overprove the value at this point. It is so easy to show like one bad data point in the dashboard and it destroys the credibility of the entire platform.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. Like literally the entire platform. They'll say something like, oh, yeah, we're going to keep using spreadsheets, or just give this to me in a slide, right? Because every other system they've ever used has created this problem. So the trust in the ability for systems to handle these things in a very hands-off way, they've never experienced anything like it in a lot of cases. And this is where the experience of outside of the ecosystem and not having HubSpot being the center,
Hmm.
it helps us to understand really the true value of HubSpot. When we say, you know, visibility and reporting and dashboards, like that can really change the way that these managers and leaders operate on a day to day. And then it just changes the kind of conversations that we get to have now, because we don't have to, uh, manage or manipulate the data ever just to have the conversation. So we spend the whole meeting like questioning where the data came from and how did we get there and how do we fix the process, right? Now it's okay, the data is telling us this. What kind of decision are we going to make based on that? And
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff we never get to in these
Yeah.
weekly meetings, that
Yeah.
once we can, now we're making progress.
We're even starting to talk on a level outside of the HubSpot dashboard. So if you've got an MCS management control system, you can create a dashboard, very simple, even a red, amber, green type of thing, which is a bit more suitable sometimes for executive level. They just want to see that it's right or that it's wrong, and then deep dive. But that it raises such a fundamentally important question. If management, if leadership particularly, are all over that data or the data quality, right? There's no tolerance for those errors in the data, then you don't get it. I have a number of sayings I trot out all the time. HubSpot is never wrong, right? It is never wrong. It can't be wrong. The only thing that can be wrong is the data. The data can be wrong, clearly. And the other thing is operator error. People come to me, it becomes a joke, or I like to make it a joke, right? They come to us and they say, why is this report not working? And before I even look at it, I go, operator error. And everybody laughs, because it always is operator error at a certain point, you know. And until you really understand it, I mean, to HubSpot partners particularly, the phrase "HubSpot's got this wrong" or "I can't trust this data in HubSpot," it's just insane. It's absolutely crazy. It's a bit like saying, you know, the sky's turned upside down. It just doesn't make any sense because it's not the case. So again, you know, once management starts to appreciate how much is tied up in that data, how much value they get from that data, and therefore insist on things like data hygiene standards, insist on OpsHub, you know, one of my favorite hubs, just because of the automatic data hygiene stuff, insist on enrichment, insist on deduping, because it's the literally, God, I get so thing about this. Honest to God, the number of businesses, I used to say this, right? The difference between a successful business and an unsuccessful business is focus. Okay. If you go into a business and it is run by dashboards, I don't mean like to a terrible extent, you know, but the chief exec knows what's going on by looking at the numbers, looking at the reports or wherever it is. The chief exec can take the temperature of each of the business units just by looking at their, you know, their run-in statistics or wherever. That business is focused. But so many businesses we deal with that are unfocused, are putting out fires on a daily basis. And the most frustrating part is they tend to be putting out the same fires on the daily basis, right? So we have no, what I call corporate memory. We forget that we've already come up with a solution for that thing 3 weeks ago, and now here we are fixing it again. This is what you should be using HubSpot for. This is what we mean by, you know, these strategic level decisions. You should be building the OS, the operating system, in HubSpot's customer platform. That's the stakes. That's what me and you were talking about here on our little call on a Monday morning. You know, is focusing your business so it becomes a lean, mean, killing machine. You know, it's not just out there trying to do everything for everybody. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to change. And if you always did, you always did. If you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And if you don't change, then you're probably going to die. You know, statistics back this up. Your business will flare, it'll mature, and then it'll decline. So if you don't change, if you don't get with the program, if you don't adopt digital thought processes, if you don't go into the cloud, if you don't understand your customer journey better, all these things that we talk about all the time, you're going to die. So this is existential. You know, this is why I get so frustrated about it. This is existential for most businesses. And just buying HubSpot is not enough. HubSpot is not a strategy. Your business's strategy must be at the forefront. Your management control system keeps a grip of your strategy, and HubSpot just delivers it. That's the relationship.
I'm gonna
Sorry for the rant.
No, I'm excited to really dig into this adoption layer with you. I know honestly, we could talk about it through the rest of the year and make a dent. And we might, because that's how important this is. Because we're thinking, like, as you're talking through that, I'm thinking about new ways I'm connecting new dots in my head. And, you know, a part of the challenge, it's not like they never see bad data anywhere else, right?
No.
But when you show it to them on a HubSpot dashboard and it's the first time they've seen it and they have no idea how the data gets there, right? They have no other route than to question the validity of the data because they don't know how it gets there. If you show them a spreadsheet or somebody, they're used to constantly correcting data that they know to be inaccurate. But when they have a spreadsheet or some tool they're used to, they know how to troubleshoot the data to make it look the way that they feel it should, right? They can't do that in HubSpot, right? And not that you want them to, but understand that little piece, because if it's the same fires every day like that, and I'm used to putting them out, I know exactly how to put them out. That is a level of safety that I have, that I'm still in control. It might be fires, but I have some control over the situation. If you put a new platform in front of me and I have no idea how it works, I have no control over that.
This is, and I want to stray off too long, but this is such a brilliant example, right? Where normally the partner or the HubSpot admin or somebody else within the team gets given responsibility for the data quality, right? there must be somebody on the senior team, if not, the financial management, the accountant, whoever it needs to be. It must be somebody whose internal job it is to ensure the data quality that other managers can look to when data quality fails, right? This is not something you can afford to outsource. Data quality or a report being incorrect is disastrous. It can't be the simple logic machine that puts ones and noughts in and delivers you a dashboard. It's got to be at the point of entry. As you say, we understand that for everything else. So if we move that from, hey, Chris, our data's wrong. Can you sort this out, man? We're paying you a fortune for this. It's not your data, it's their data. They're the ones who need to be in charge of the data, and the chief exec should be holding whoever it is accountable to those data hygiene standards in the same way they would for the revenue levels, for the NPS score, for the SLA scores, for anything else. Data is the lifeblood of the business. It's important enough that we don't get to play with it. Of course, we can fix it. We can show them how to fix it. We can help them. But that troubleshooting thing that you do, you can look at an Excel sheet and go, oh, look, let me just reorder. They need to get there with HubSpot as a leadership team. It's not somebody else's data, it's their data. Anyway, sorry.
Yes.
Maybe that's another one we'll cover in a bit more detail again in the future.
No, no, I think so. I think at some point sounds like a dashboard of some sort. Building one live on the show or talking through one live will be a good will be a good practice or example to run through to say like
Dashboards are a
where we
great way
should
to think
go,
of it.
right?
Yeah,
And kind of,
just even simple dashboards, even simple KPIs is a management control system. Just having 12 KPIs. And the way you say we would do it is you have a weekly stand up, you have a monthly KPI meeting, and then you have a quarterly review.
yeah.
And there's a whole other can of worms there, isn't it? Who turns up to the quarterly review, right? When everybody cancels the quarterly review because they've got better things to do, your project is in trouble. Get out of there fast
Yes.
before it starts to burn down.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I do think that's, again, if they know that things are going to happen at the quarterly review that are going to matter and are important, and the last thing you want to do is miss one of those, you just
Yeah,
change the dynamic
yeah,
in the conversation. You should not be begging people to come to that, right?
yeah,
So we'll, HubSpot has a lot of great tools to help you make that and everything in between a very valuable activity when people can review it beforehand, understand it, and now we get into the meeting and we're having much more valuable conversations than
yeah,
just kind of building it in the meeting itself, right? If we're
yeah,
building understanding of current state inside of the meeting, then we're a little bit lost,
yeah.
right?
It's all gone wrong.
So I look forward to digging into some of those dashboards and reports, with you, focusing on KPIs are a challenge for most organizations,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
true.
And we'll dig into those. But as you think about like, I'd love for if you have KPIs, that your organization is either struggling to define or understand, or we keep hearing that we're supposed to be doing KPIs like this, but we have no idea how to measure them. Let us know, and we'll be happy to run through some
That would be
examples.
great to
Yeah.
actually pick up a couple of live ones and talk about it and show how you build it in HubSpot. That's building strategy in HubSpot. That's it. That is literally it. Yeah, some examples where we could help would be amazing. Bring them
Yes.
in, send them
So
in.
as you think about that stuff, let's find some opportunities and let's grow. Have a great week, everybody.